How's it going, everyone? I am Dylan. This is my cousin Carlo. This is All You Can Board, and this is video 4 of our, that's a weird way to word it, but this is 20 to 11 of our top 50 games of all time, 2022 edition. This is going to be an interesting section. There are, for me, a couple games that are debuting in this section. There's a couple that are moving a little bit. There's a couple that have moved a lot. There'll be a nice variety, I think, in this one.
Cool. Yeah, I have one in this section that's completely new to me on the list, and then, yeah, some good movement.
Is that your highest new one of all top 50 then?
No, there's going to be one that cracks the top 10 that wasn't in the top 50 for me last year. So,
right,
yeah,
right
one in each of those ranges for me.
Sweet. All right, I will throw it to you for pick number 20.
All right, number 20 is the highest ranked party game on the list for me. It has moved up 11 spots from number 31 last year, and that is Just One. So this is an excellent party game. Obviously, Dylan spoke about it a little earlier. I think it was, in your 30s or 40s for you somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's... Even last year, it was really tough to place this game on my list, even at 31, because when you do like the Pub Maple ranking, you're looking at games near it, and you keep thinking like, is this better? Like it's just a simple party game, but every single time I play it, it's never been a letdown. It's gone over so well with every single group, and I really like word games, and the fact that it's like a word game that works also as a party game, and I don't tend to like a ton of cooperative games. But this is one that's just always a hit for me. It's just like a really reliable game that has like a very simple design. It just feels like one of those ones that's going to be kind of around forever. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know if it'll ever get any higher than this on the list, but it's one of those ones like with Wavelength that I mentioned earlier that over the last year and especially couple of years just with pandemic and stuff, like being able to get back to playing games with people, this one has like had some just really solid experiences for me. So yeah, I think it earns its spot on the list here. I don't know if it'll go higher later in the future, but yeah, Just One.
Nice. I'm actually surprised it climbed that much, but I guess you've played it a bunch. I mean, it debuted for me. Like it's the one that kind of grows over time, so makes sense. But you said 11 spots?
Yeah, it was.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is I tried. It's on Board Game Arena now, and I was like, it's probably not going to work as well on here. And I tried it with some people in our Discord, and like we all loved it. It worked super well actually. And we did. I think we got like 12 out of 13 in the score. Everyone was like, yeah, it was awesome. So anyway, that's Just One.
Sweet. Okay, my number 20 was 25 last year, so it's moved up 5 spots, and that's from a really good session of it that we had. I think I played it twice this year, and that is the Quest for El Dorado. Nice. So from 25 to 20, this is a great deck builder. It's so accessible. It's so simple. I've said it before. I think we both have. It may be the best option to introduce someone to a deck builder out of any board game I know of, just in terms of how simple it is, and because the cards and their effects on the board and the like what their cards are actually doing are so simple and easy to grasp that you can kind of focus on learning the actual deck building aspect of it without feeling like, okay, what does this card do? What does this card do? Whatever. Like there are some ability cards, but relatively speaking, they're pretty accessible, and the base cards you start with are like, you know, not complicated at all.
Yeah.
So
and it's kind of smart. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but it's smart that they leave the other ones separate where you can't even get them early. So you can get people into the game. Hey, these are the ones you can afford now. Worry about the other ones later.
Yeah, totally. And just, I mean, the different modifications of the board add so much replayability. You can use a different board every time. You can make your own up in terms of the layout. There's an expansion out for, I think 2 expansions out for it. So there's like ways to expand it if you ever like find that you're getting tired of the base game, where you just need some variety there. But honestly, it's just a really good introductory deck builder that even after you've been introduced to deck builders, it never stops being fun. With like the session we had on our live stream back in May, if you haven't checked it out, you can go watch it. It's on the channel in our live section. It was a great session of it. I think it came down to like, it was just like, I don't want to spoil it in case someone is going to go watch it, but there was some interesting maneuvering, and we both took very different strategies, and it just was a good representation of how varied the game can be. So yeah, that is the Quest for El Dorado, my number 20.
Nice, very nice pick. Glad to see it moved up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 5 spots.
All right, number 19 for me stays at number 19 from last year, a game we've spoken about many times in the channel that was earlier in your list, I think in the 30s or 40s, and that is the greatest filler game ever created, For Sale. This continues to just, it's similar to Just One, honestly, in terms of why it earns its spot on this list. And these are the 2, I think beyond here, I don't think we're going to see any games this simple in terms of rule set. I think For Sale and Just One are kind of the pinnacle for me of those high player count games that have rules you can teach in like 2 minutes, play it sort of an infinite amount of times, even though it feels like you kind of see everything. Like, in a way, you're not like going to be surprised by what you see in future games, right? It's, you know what the rules are, but it's just the experience is so fun and so satisfying all the time that you just keep coming back to it. So yeah, it's one of the best auction games as it is. Obviously, there are other auction games that do more and have more complexity to them, and at least one or two are going to appear later on in my list. But in terms of a short game, 20-ish minutes, you really can't do much better than For Sale.
Yeah, it's like I said, it was my omission last year that I regretted when I realized it, or when you called me out on it, and especially after I played it a few more times and remembered like how much it actually. I think it was more a victim last year for me of like it being a hard one to rank against other games a little because it's been a filler game and party-ish, not party, but like just it was a hard game to rank, and I think I just didn't give it its proper due. So yeah, I'm not surprised that it's still this high on your list, staying in the same spot.
Yeah,
so.
and like this game came out in I think it was the 90s, and like we're born in 88, and it feels like a crime that we discovered this game in our 30s. Like why weren't we playing this game much sooner? So anyways, For Sale.
My number 19 also was number 19 last year and didn't move.
Nice.
And that is Fjords.
Yeah.
And that is because it still will always hold and continues to hold a special place in my heart. And it may have moved up if I had received my copy of the reprint and had been able to experience it some more and had more experience with it. But I just didn't play it this year. But even having not played it, it didn't move because I still absolutely love Fjords, and I know I'm going to get the new version. And once I start playing that, there is a good chance, as long as the new version doesn't ruin the experience somehow, that I could even see this climbing from spot 19. Because really, it's only here in many ways because I don't play it very often, because the only place I could play it would be our board game cafe that I know of reliably. So yeah, it's a great game with two different phases, similar to Blue Lagoon in many ways. It's one of the reasons I like Blue Lagoon a lot, but just more focused on you build. In Blue Lagoon, you have a board. In Fjords, you're building the board essentially with these hex tiles as you go, and so the board is going to look different every single time you play. And the way that you're building it out is keeping in mind how you're trying to trap your opponent and create opportunities for yourself, and that just makes it really, really fun. I love playing it. It's a quick playing game with two phases, and yeah, it's number 19 now, and it might climb in the future.
Cool. Yeah, this is one that I haven't played in now a few years. I think I remember it was kind of near my top 50 last year, but this year I couldn't even put it in the running because didn't get a chance to play it. But I'm really eager to play this one again.
Sweet.
All right, number 18 on my list has moved up 2 spots from number 20 last year, and I think the only thing really preventing it from moving any higher is that I think all of my plays, maybe one of them was physical, most of my plays in the past year were digital, and it's a really drab, dry-looking game, but that is Innovation. This is one of the best tableau builders around for sure, one of the best games around that uses just cards. I mean, I guess technically there's the little cardboard player board thing that you tuck your cards under and stuff, but you wouldn't really need that to play. But it's like basically a sort of civilization themed game that you plays over across 10 eras. Like there's 10 different decks of cards, era 1 through 10. Representing kind of advancement of civilization, so you're getting pretty basic things early on, and then throughout the game you start advancing and getting things that involve like military, or you can play cards that represent like the internet, and there's all kinds of different advancements that come throughout the game, and you're basically playing cards on top of each other that end up getting splayed, that are revealing symbols to kind of gain advantages over your opponent. It's a game that has a lot of icons on the cards, and a lot of the game is spent looking down at the cards, comparing how many icons you have with your opponent, as well as trying to read, like, a lot of the abilities are very text heavy, and this is another thing that prevents it so far from being higher on my list, is that because the cards don't have anything recognizable other than a name and a couple of symbols, that you see these symbols on a lot of other cards, you tend to forget what the cards do. So even after reading all your abilities and your opponent's abilities, you go, wait, what's that one again? Oh, what's this one again? And then you have to read like a few sentences worth. So it sometimes takes you out of the game a bit, but the swings in this game, the comebacks, it's just an incredible design and has so much room to explore. I know I'm going to be playing this one for a long time, and it might move higher on the list, but for now there's a certain fun factor that sometimes is just a little lacking because it just looks so dull and sometimes feel like work to figure out what's going on in the cards.
Yeah, I've only played this once, and I think it was also a situation where when I played it the one time, even though I knew the rules, there were some things I didn't fully grasp, so the experience wasn't like as much as it could have been for me, and then I didn't go back to it. So I need to go back to it. make sure I understand everything about it and just go back a couple times and play it to see if what is hooking you and is hooking Braden and stuff like that will hook me, or if maybe it is just not a game for me.
Yeah.
But I can't say yet, so I don't know. So I just hear all this great stuff, but I'm like, yeah, I need to go back to it. And I just keep forgetting.
It's such a steep learning curve, and if you're playing against someone who has played it a lot, you're gonna have a very low chance, because a big part of the game is knowing the cards and knowing what you can or can't draw into to switch the game and come back and stuff. But yeah, incredible game. One that's like feels infinitely replayable. That is innovation.
Nice. Number 18 for me was 17 last year. It's dropped a single spot, which is not even I don't know what the word is. It doesn't really matter with the one spot shift. And that is Hallertau. Hallertau is a great Uwe Rosenberg game that you already spoke about. Honestly, if I had played this more and we had revisited it like we've talked about wanting to do, this may have had the potential to climb instead of dropping a spot. I don't know how much it would actually climb. Like, I don't think, from my experience with Hallertau so far, that it's going to be like, oh, if I play it 3 more times, this could be a top 10 game. Like, I think it's pretty close to where the highest it's going to potentially ever be. But who knows? I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe there's something I haven't unlocked there, playing with like 4 a bunch or something. But yeah, there's not much more I could say about it, because I know you covered it a bunch, but it's just a really accessible but yet big box Uwe Rosenberg game, which kind of makes it interesting. Like, normally we have the 2 different sides, right? You have like the Agricola's and the Feast Rodens and like the Le Havres, and then you have like the patchwork, right, on the opposite side. Whereas I feel like Hallertau looks like you're about to get into a game that is going to be very inaccessible to everyone, and then you kind of, when you get to the rules, you'll realize everything is structured around one thing, and if you kind of just hone in on that, it's a interesting worker placement game where you have this clear objective that you're trying to accomplish.
The complexity mostly is from the cards.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, great Uwe Rosenberg game. We need to explore it more, and it's already super high on my list from the few times that I have played it.
Nice. Yeah, I said plenty about it before, but yeah, happy to see that's high on your list.
Nice.
All right, coming in at number 17 for me, this one has also dropped 2 spots like the previous games. This was number 15 last year, and that is Santorini. So it fully justified still in being where it is on the list. Still one of the best 2-player experiences around, in my opinion. Technically, you can play up to 4, but it's really not the same game with 3 or with 4. But with 2 players, I love the dynamic of the height. The basic idea of the game is you have 2 pieces on the board each, you and your opponent, and on your turn you move one of your 2 pieces any direction or diagonally, and then you have to build a little piece of this tower. You're either going to build a level 1, level 2, or level 3 piece to the tower. Once it has a 3rd level, you can put a dome on it to cap the tower, but the goal of the game is the first person to move with their character, to like jump onto a level 3 tower, wins. So you're trying to move around the map and figure out how to take advantage of your, you can play this game without these god powers, where it's just the basic kind of even matchup, or you can introduce these god power cards where each player has a very unique asymmetric ability, which is where the game is at its most enjoyable. We've played this so many times. It's a game that we've talked about before. It'll sit on the shelf sometimes for like 3 months, 6 months at a time, and I kind of forget about it. But every time it comes off the shelf, we play minimum 3 or 5 rounds because it's so good, and we always go, man, it still holds up so well every time. You made a very good point in your recent video about things you dislike about I won't say which game, I guess, whatever. Where you mentioned the thing that some matchups can sometimes not be as fun, or they can drag on, and that's probably the only thing keeping it from being higher on the list. But yeah, Santorini will never leave my collection, I don't think. It's just such a good 2-player game.
Yeah. I will have more to say about it later on, but the only thing I'll quickly say here is it might hold that spot for me as this like chess style 2-player dueling game for a long time. The only one upcoming that I'm kind of curious about, because I was curious about That Time You Killed Me, and I really liked it, but it's not going to replace Santorini for me.
Yeah, it's a bit very different.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see if Ragnarok's is going to have any chance of doing that when we receive it, because it's by I think it's the same designer, same kind of look and feel to what it's doing, and we should be receiving our copy soon. So
yeah, would you put Summoner Wars in that group too? I know it's different because it's not it's cards obviously, but it does feel like a chess style abstract still.
Maybe I'd have to play it more.
Yeah, fair enough. We've only played it once, I guess.
But either way, good pick.
Cool.
All right, number 17 for me is debuting on the list for the very first time, and it was my number 1 game of 2021, I believe, and that is Radlands. So Radlands slots in at 17. I continue to just love this game. It's because of 2 big reasons. Well, actually, first of all, it's just a really, really simple, quick, plain 2-player card battling game, which is always going to have a good chance of resonating with me, because I love those kind of games. I come back to them frequently. I can find lots of opportunities to play them, which is a really good thing. This one specifically, I love that you're both pulling from the same deck, because I found when I played Radlands consecutively close together, even if it's with different people, and I start to remember which cards are in the deck, I can see where the meta, so to speak, can start to form with Radlands when you start to like know how many of each card is in this deck. You know, which card, if I drew a card, which one they are less likely to have themselves, or in some cases they will not have that card because there's only one copy of it. And so you can kind of craft strategies around that. But the thing I love the most is just the system of having your three camps that you're trying to, that's how you win the game or lose the game. Having them destroying your opponents, and having to defend them, because that there's so many swings in Radlands. It's never clear where there's like, oh, someone has 2 camps gone, and so like clearly they're gonna lose. Sometimes maybe, but other times we've had 2 camps go away quickly, and then all of a sudden the other player just cruises through the rest of the game because they just had a late start, or they're able to now focus on a single lane, and that's their benefit with the cards that they have in their hand. The abilities on the camps are so much fun, and the way you draft them at the beginning and try to figure out like which abilities you're gonna have. I absolutely love that process as well.
I really like that part too. The camp, because they determine certain camps determine how many cards you start with.
Yeah.
So the stronger the camp, the fewer cards
That's
you
a great
start with,
system.
and you don't draw many cards throughout the game, right? So yeah, it's really smart.
Yeah, and I mean like just like the water tower and getting extra a resource to spend later, and there's so many great things about it. Every single time I play it, I have a good time. I discover a different strategy or a different combination, and the more people I introduce to, the more people seem to resonate with it. Even if they don't love it, they're like, I want to play that again, or let's do a best of 3, or whatever the case may be. Again, this is another one we played on the live stream back in May, so if you want to see a live session of us playing it, you can check that one out. It was pretty good. But that is Radlands, number 17 debut.
Nice. Yeah, it's such a nice looking game too. The production value, the artwork's stunning. Yeah, great game. Look forward to playing it a lot more with you.
Nice.
All right, coming in at number 16. So this is the one in this range, in the 20 to 11, that is new to the list. This is one that was pretty close to making my top 50 last year, but I had hesitated because I hadn't played it enough times, and I had only played it digitally on Board Game Arena. And full disclosure, I've still only played it on Board Game Arena, but I've played it so much in the past year that I couldn't keep it off this list. That is The Voyages of Marco Polo.
Oh, okay.
So we talked about this in a recent Retro Reviews video, obviously. It's a game that I just, for whatever reason, I thought it was a game that wasn't going to have the long-term legs for me. And I think that was another thing that I thought last year, is I hadn't seen all the characters. And it's a game where you're doing this sort of, it's similar to worker placement, but it's sort of dice placement. You roll dice at the beginning of the round. You're going to play over 5 rounds. And the dice that you roll are going to kind of determine what values you have and where on the map you can go. You're fulfilling contracts and gaining resources and traveling around Asia and all kinds of stuff. But what makes the game super interesting is that every player has their own unique player power that you get at the start of the game, and it completely feels like it breaks the rules of the game. Every power feels like it's unfair until you see everyone else's power. And to me, I'm always hesitant because there's a lot of games we've played where that have like player powers and things like that, and once I explore those, a lot of games lose their appeal to me right away. It's like, now I've seen the characters, I no longer have the desire to come back. And this past year, I've played with all the characters multiple times and against them, and I'm still like dying to come back and play this game. And that's what has convinced me that it has the legs long term. And again, even though it's just on Board Game Arena, again, this isn't one of those little games that you play that's 10 minutes long and it's just a time waster. Like, it takes a substantial amount of time, and I've played it a lot online, and I think this is one I'm going to probably end up owning a physical copy of one day. So yeah, The Voyages of Marco Polo, excellent game.
Nice. This one just missed my top 50, and it's really just, I need to play it more. I played it a couple times this year, but they were spaced apart, and I couldn't even remember too much about the plays, except for the most recent one we did. But I think I can almost guarantee if I get in a few more plays and I played, like, especially if one of us gets the physical version, we're playing with like a group around a table, that it'll probably crack my top 50, and it has a chance to like go pretty high as well, because I agree, like, it's just such a great experience.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's Voyages of Marco Polo.
Nice. Number 16 for me, also debuting. It's the other debut in this this section, and that is a very popular game called Root.
Oh, nice.
So Root,
I was wondering where this is going to debut for you.
This is one of my most played games this year, actually. When I started looking up plays, I don't think it's my most played, but it's up there. We now have a group that meets, like, if not monthly, once every month and a half, 2 months. So I play Root consistently. I've experienced almost every faction. Not maybe me playing personally, but in our sessions, we've played with almost every faction. We're just missing one of the expansions, so 2 factions shy. Root is really, really hooked me, not just because the gameplay I find so interesting, especially not only learning each of the different factions, but saying, how am I going to play this faction against these three factions specifically, or how am I going to adapt to their play style? But it is just one of those games that we congregate around. In the same way we did for King's Dilemma when we were playing that, we just have root nights, and something about that, like meeting up with the same people, the camaraderie, and like who are they going to choose, what is their play style and everything. When you find a game that clicks in that environment, it's so hard not to kind of tie that into your experience of the game and how you rate it. Sure. And that is what Root has become now. And it's also a game that I'm hoping to slowly introduce to more people and have you play more and as well, so that there ends up being no rule teaches ever, and it's just we sit down, we take it out, who does everyone want to play, do we want to randomize it, and we just jump into it. And the fact that now I played with a different board, because one of the expansions comes with 2 different boards. I played with a completely different board. That was super exciting to like not only play with that new board, but you randomize which symbols are on each of the areas rather than on the main board, where I think you had the option on the main board to use the winter side, and you could do that. But on the main board, those symbols are always in the same spot, and that determines like the category of, I can't remember the terminology in the game, but like there's like 3 different animal faces or whatever. It's like bunnies, fox, So like instead of those being set, they can be randomized, and that changed our experience too. So there's I mean, I could talk way too long about Root and how much it's like growing on me now. It took us a long time to play compared to like when it came out and when it was popular. We played Oath first, surprisingly enough. But yeah, I'm very, very hooked on Root. There's a chance it could even climb higher depending on, after I play this multiple more times and I've experienced all the factions, whether I find that like, okay, I've kind of like, my experience is now diminishing because I've seen it all, or whether it continues to feel exciting and whether they continue to release more content that we want to buy. It's hard to say, but right now I'm just enamored with it. It's great.
Yeah, a lot of it will probably be group dependent too, right? If your group continues to want to play it all the time and whatnot, but yeah, I've only played it the one time still, and I thought it was a really interesting game. I liked a lot about it, and I want to play it again for sure.
There's Root number 16.
All right, coming in at number 15 is a game you just recently spoke of earlier in this same video. This one has moved up 9 spots for me, which I did not expect until I was going through the ranking. It just kept surprising me, the games it was passing. So from 24 up to 15 is The Quest for El Dorado. So, and part of it is that I think I played it maybe 4 or 5 times in the past year since our last time we did our top 50, and every play just went over so well. You mentioned the one that we had on the live stream. I've also introduced it to a couple people who in the past year who really enjoyed it on their first play, and I guess I keep, last year I remember thinking like, it was a game that I wouldn't want to play too often because I thought, the basic market of cards is the same every game, and there's only so many possible map configurations, and even if you do try different ones, I thought, how different could the game be and whatnot? But the race just always seems to play out differently, and the order that you decide to, because of the way that you draw the cards, sometimes that's going to determine, like your starting hand might make you go near a spot where you want to start trashing cards, like you give me a hard time for always doing, trying to thin out the deck early on. And then sometimes you want to go to the cave spots and get a bunch of these cave tiles, or other times you want to race ahead or block one of those choke points so that your opponent can't get through. And I think the other thing is that in the past, we had played it mostly with 3 players or possibly 4. And I think in the past year, every time I played it was as a 2-player game, or almost every time. And I really like that aspect of having 2 adventurers and being able to block. And also really like you can race ahead with one, and you could literally leave one of your adventurers at the start of the race. And then, anyways, there's just a lot of different ways to play it. It's so simple. One of the best deck builders around. Quest for El Dorado.
I won't say it, I don't have anything else to say about it, but I will ask you, do you think we'll ever play it and you do it any strategy that doesn't involve trashing cards?
Why would I do something that makes my deck less efficient?
I mean, some would say that, actually I don't want to spoil it.
No, I know what you were going to say. Some would say that I went overboard and that's what potentially maybe did or didn't cost me the game. But I made some poor choices along the way. I have a couple of regrets, but I will never change my approach of trashing as many of those garbage cards as possible early on. But yeah, amazing game.
Yeah. Number 15 for me was 11 last year, dropped 4 spots. That is Kingdom Builder. Still an adored game by me. It's going to be one that is one of those personal classics that I'll always come back to and have a good time with and kind of revisit here and there, especially when I'm introducing someone to it who's never experienced it. I think I'll always get that catharsis out of it because of how much I enjoy the game. It fell a little bit because there's just a lot of competition and there's more games getting added to the list, and I played a little bit less Kingdom Builder this year than I have in previous years, but it just remains a classic for me that it's going to be hard for a game to kind of replace Kingdom Builder. Winter Kingdom could if I have more different experiences with it, but even then I like Winter Kingdom is not to make a comparison, Winter Kingdom is a more complex or has more going on, and so much of what I love about Kingdom Builder is how simple it is, but has this strategy that really makes you think like, what can I do on this turn? How can I accomplish what I'm trying to do? What if I move this so I'm not touching that terrain, and then I do this and then I jump here? Like that puzzle and figuring that all out is always very satisfying to me, and so I love that in Kingdom Builder. I love the game, and it's just, yeah, like I said, I'm going to come back to it for a long time, and so it's probably going to stay in this little range for a little bit, and it'll be a long time for it to ever potentially leave the top 50. I don't even think it ever will. I think this is going to be one of those games that will settle into a spot eventually, and this will just be the area it lives in, depending on how many times I've played it.
Right. Yeah, it's going to take playing upwards of like 1,000 games or something to push that off the list eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, amazing game. I think I had it at like number 28. It really surprised me that this game is like around 10 years old now and has pretty much like no theme, like maybe not no theme, but the theme feels very abstract, but it feels so engaging every time. Yeah, amazing game. Okay, coming in at number 14 for me. This is down 3 spots from number 11 last year, and I think it's mainly because I just didn't play it in the last year and because some other games just moved up ahead of it. That is Tiny Towns. So my opinion of the game hasn't changed at all, and I think the main reason why I hadn't played it in the past year, well, the main person I played it with was mostly my wife, and it's her number 1 game of all time, actually, as she told us recently. Yep. And but like we have a baby at home now, so we don't have as much time to play games together. And when we have in the past year or so, we've been discovering some new games. But we've logged probably a good 20 to 30 plays of Tiny Towns. In terms of, if you like these kind of spatial awareness, spatial puzzle games where you have like a board that feels like very constrained in terms of what you can put there and how you're trying to squeeze as many things into there as you can. Like this is, in my opinion, probably the best game around for that type of experience. And the fact that it plays extremely well from all player counts, 1 to 6 in about 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour tops if you include setup and people learning for the first time or whatnot. And there's no downtime. Like there's just, every time I think for a second, like maybe this game isn't quite as good as the credit I'm giving it, I start thinking about it, and it's really tough to find any flaws or things that I don't like. It's never going to crack my top 10. Like I think 11 last year was the highest it's going to go. I think it's like you said, like, you know, I'm not going to ever, my opinion of this game isn't going to probably improve, but I just think it's one of those very underrated games. I think a lot of people discredit it because it looks like a more simple family weight game, and people think like, oh, the cute artwork with the animals or something like that, but there's such an awesome decision space, and it's just such a tough interactive game. I really love Tiny Towns.
Yeah, honestly, it's been so long since I played Tiny Towns that I know I really enjoyed it. That's the reason it's never shown up on my list, is like I just haven't played it enough, and I'm trying to recall, like I remember it being fond of the experience. I remember being surprised by it, but I can't even remember like the full rules because it's been so long.
Right, and especially because of what you thought of the fit-to-print prototype from the same designer, Peter First. I know you're interested in wormholes. I think you will like Tiny Towns quite a bit if we revisit it. So we'll make a point to play it a couple times this year for sure.
Yeah, agreed. Number 14 for me is also a debut. I think it's the last one in this section. And it is a fairly new game. This might be the newest game on the list. I'm pretty sure it probably is.
I know what it is.
And it's Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. So this is a re-edition of Libertalia. So I actually hadn't played the original Libertalia, but I have played Winds of Galecrest. I really, really love this game. It's designed by Paolo Mori, and he also did Ethnos and also did Caesar. Two other games that show up on this list. What I love so much about Libertalia is how different every game is, and not like you all start with the same cards, and that knowledge is so intriguing because I play a card, but now I know, say I'm playing with 6 people, the other 5 people, if they haven't played it, all have that card in their hand, and I have to try to remember that knowledge and allow it to influence the way I play going forward. So for instance, we had a game recently with 6 people where the Brute was available, and the Brute will destroy the highest initiative card on the island. And I was trying to calculate near the end of the game how many people have played their Brute, because I want to go play a card and I know there's a good chance it's going to be the highest one because I know what everyone else has left in their hands, or what we all had that round. Yeah. And if there's a Brute left, there's a good chance it'll completely mess me up to get Bruted. Right. And so trying to retain that knowledge, things like that, and just the way that all the characters, there's 40 characters, you're not going to see, I think you see like a total of 15 each game or something like that.
Somewhere around there.
it's not just a matter of like, oh, we haven't seen this one before, or we haven't seen this one in a while. It's the combination with others. We've seen the Wind Nymph, I think, every single time we play. It's different depending what the Wind Nymph is there with. If the Wind Nymph is with the Brute, suddenly the Wind Nymph might not even make it into play, right? Like, there's
not to
so
mention the way
much
that those combine with the loot tokens, because some of them actually are affected by the loot token distribution and what you get.
And you can play the two different sides of the board, so you have different abilities on the loot tokens. There's just so much variety, and it's so fun to see the interactions. Like, even when you get really bad luck, like, it doesn't feel bad because you know that you probably could have calculated the odds or figured it out, and now you can respond by knowing, okay, but even though that really annoying card just screwed me over, I still have my copy, and now I can hold it back and play it at the most opportune time to try to, you know, swing the game again. It's a fantastic game. I honestly, playing it at 6 players right before we filmed this was really good because I already loved it, and then there's not many games where I've played it at 3 and loved it, and then played it at 6 and also loved it. Normally I think like, oh, I wouldn't want to play this game at 6. Like even Keyflower I've said that about, right? And this one, I don't even know. I loved it at 3. I loved it at 6. I think I still liked it more at 6 than 3. And I guess that maybe there's a chance that like 4 or 5 ends up being the sweet spot. But
I totally agree with you.
But
there.
it's like it
still
wasn't
so
bad.
At 6 because
either
it's almost
one.
all simultaneous play, right?
It's just a phenomenal game. I love it. It was such a surprise because I heard a lot of people talking about it, and I thought like, oh, cool, I'm intrigued. I want to check it out. But I really didn't think it was going to resonate with me this much. Where on the first year it's eligible for this top 50, it's slotted into 14.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance that this could end up being a top 10 game for me. Like I love this game. I just need to play it and experience it more. So I didn't want to put it on my top 10 and have it not have deserve that spot just because I have the rose-colored glasses
or the
on,
recency.
So. Yeah. But phenomenal game. I love it.
Awesome game. I think this was somewhere in my 60s when I did my ranking, so it wasn't super close to making my top 50, but again, I've only played it a few times. But yeah, really, really good game. And again, not many games give you this much game across that player count in, what was it, 45 minutes to an hour? It says on the box. I know when we played with 6, it took longer, but like 4 people were learning the game for the first time. Right?
Yeah,
So.
and I think like if we played with people who had already played it before and we played at 4 or 5, I think there's a good chance we could probably clock that in an hour.
Yeah, for sure. And lots of laughs, whether you're winning or losing. Like I did terribly. Like the next closest player was probably 20-some points ahead of me, and I still had a blast playing.
Yeah, great game.
Okay, coming in at number 13 for me. This moved up 1 spot from 14 last year. This one you spoke about, I think, in the previous video. That is Blue Lagoon.
Yeah.
So this is one of my absolute favorite tile laying games. Very interactive, simple rule set kind of game from Dr. Rainer Knizia, my favorite designer. Basically, it's a 2-phase game, which we've spoken a lot about these. You know, Fjords, For Sale, Blue Lagoon is, what was the other one I was thinking of? Doesn't matter. These 2-phase games are awesome, and again, I don't need to go about like the rules and things. You mentioned a lot about it in the past video. I just love the kind of that aspect of putting pressure on people by placing a piece next to theirs or getting next to the resources. You know those moves I'm talking about where there's 2 resources, one on either side, and someone puts a piece down right next to where you were waiting to get one, and now you have to pick like, which one do I take? Because then they're going to take the other one, and then while I'm taking that one, someone else is going to take another resource I was next to somewhere else on the map. So you start off with all these grand plans at the beginning of each of the halves, and like, you sort of have to like come to terms as the round goes on with the things that you're not going to be able to get to. So it's kind of about not being too stubborn and being able to cut your losses and accept that you just have to give up on something, while also like there's the combination of like you want to kind of try to do a bit of everything, but you also kind of have to specialize in at least 1 or 2 things to do well, and it feels very different at all the player counts. So yeah, really, really good game. I don't think it'll ever get into my top 10 or anything like that. But yeah, Blue Lagoon is just a fantastic game, and for the price point, how quickly it plays, how simple the rules are and all that, there really aren't many games that fit into that kind of space as well as Blue Lagoon. So
yeah, agreed. I mean, it's my biggest climber. My fucking appreciation is growing now that I continue to play. It's such a great game. It's one I might actually own myself at some point. I think it would be a good one to just have in the collection because lots of people would enjoy this game.
Yeah, really nice game to look at on the table too. Very colorful and just very inviting kind of presence. So, yeah, that's Blue Lagoon at number, what was that, 13? Yeah, 13.
Nice. Number 13 for me, big climber from 26 last year to 13. Nice. And that's because I played it. It was either this or Root, I believe, are my 2 most played games of the year. And this is also one that I now am playing with the rules correctly, and that's Patchwork. So Patchwork is a game I've been playing for a long time. This isn't like a new to me game or by any means. We did have one of the rules wrong, like we mentioned in a previous video, and it was really the tournament that we had that And not just because I made it to the finals and I did well, but I just mean like in general, playing that many games of Patchwork against people of all different skill levels and really having to like get into the nitty gritty and the meta of it, that really, really made me appreciate the depth of this game and the strategy and how much I love it and how much I would actually adore playing it at a really high level, difficulty level, competitive level on a regular basis if I could. Like those games were so much fun, and it's also a game where I played it uber competitively with people that play very well, and I was like looking every move so many times ahead to try to get to the finals and all that kind of stuff. And then I also played it with a bunch of people on like first dates or people who had never played board games before. Like I introduced it like 5 or 6 times this year at least to new people, and it always and like I had to like sort of scale myself back that I'm not just going to go in and try to trash these people. But there's times where like I legitimately lost, and I wasn't going. Maybe I wasn't like looking 5 moves ahead to try to like be like, how can I trap them? But where it's still accessible enough that people were being successful playing it the first time.
I remember you texted me once saying I just taught Patrick to someone and I finished the game with -12 and they beat me up. It's just like that's awesome. It's such a good experience to have that happen though. It's like
it's a testament that a game that I played well before it hit 26 on the list, I played a bunch more this year and it moved up 13 spots. Like this is one that's going to end up being, like I said with Kingdom Builder, a classic in my personal collection. I'm going to be playing this for a long time to come, and I think my appreciation just really went up this year after we did that rules fix and we played so many games in that tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. A fantastic game and one of my climbers for the year too. I think I had it at 41 or something like that. So yeah, really good game. Okay, number 12 on the list for me is one that actually dropped 4 spots. It's the one in this range that dropped out of my top 10. So this was at number 8 last year, and that is Babylonia. So this is another Reiner Knizia tile laying game. And so for those who, remember what I mentioned about Blue Lagoon. So last year Blue Lagoon was 14, Babylonia was 8, and this year they've both kind of come a little bit closer. It was neck and neck. I almost put Blue Lagoon ahead of Babylonia. I think... So there's a couple big main differences about these games. Babylonia definitely has more going on in terms of the decision space and the fact that on your turn, sometimes you're going to be placing, well, you're always placing minimum 2 tiles, but sometimes you're going to be placing 3 or more of these farmers, which work a little bit differently than your other main nobles that you can place 2 of. So there's more options in that sense, and then also the fact that there's no placement restrictions. You can go anywhere on the map, so you don't have to respect like going adjacent to where you were before. So there's definitely more... more things on the map to kind of parse and get a grasp of, and I haven't played it anywhere near as much as Blue Lagoon. So what holds me back and what made me cool just very slightly on Babylonia, there's a couple things. One is each time I've played, there's some of the powers that you get when you surround the ziggurats and you get those power tiles. Some of them just feel inherently like better than others, and maybe that's by design, and maybe that's intentionally because they want you to race for the ziggurats because they know that you want to compete for certain ones, like the ones that give you the extra turn or the one that lets you have a rack of 7 tiles instead of 5. Like it feels like those are always the first 2 that people get, and the later the game goes on, there's less incentive to get them. And the other thing is the way the scoring, like almost every turn they're scoring, and a lot of the time you're scoring when it's not your turn, so the flow of the game slows just a bit compared to Blue Lagoon where you place and it's like, okay, and then because that's city, you get 2 points, and this person's getting 1 point, and this person's getting 3 points, so it just loses a bit of the flow. But I feel bad now because I'm kind of highlighting a lot of the negative, like the criticisms I have with the game.
You're explaining why it dropped.
Yeah, exactly. Explaining why it dropped, but like this is my number 12 game out of like we mentioned, we've played around 400 board games. Like this is an incredible game, one of the best tiling games around. And I just think that I've only played it maybe about 5 or 6 times. I need to play it a lot more with people who have played it frequently, because every time I play, there's at least one new person, and there's some part of the rules that maybe they don't quite grasp, and we're not quite getting the best experience that we can out of Babylonia yet. So this is by no means where it's going to settle in long term, but for now, I couldn't justify keeping it in my top 10, and maybe I was a little rash putting it at number 8 last year, but I was just, my first few plays of it had just blown me away. So still an amazing game. That is Babylonia.
Yeah, I don't even know if I played it this year. Like I played it a couple times with you right when you got it around that time, but I haven't played it since, and I don't even know if I played it with more than 2 yet.
Right, I was going to say, I think we only played it together once at 2 players, or maybe twice. And I remember you had it on your top 50 last year, but it was maybe in the 40s or something.
And it fell off. But like, I think for it to come back on, I'd have to play it at least 2 or 3 times and with 3 or 4 players, and just like to really see how it feels for me at those counts.
Yes, but that's definitely where it's best with higher player count.
But it is a great game.
Yeah.
Number 12 for me dropped from number 9, also fell out of my my top 10.
I know what this is.
And that is Santorini.
Yep.
Santorini, I mean, it dropped 3 spots. Really, in my opinion, it hasn't changed. It's just, again, competition, other games coming on the list. Phenomenal game. You've said most of it. I love the decision. Like, you have to look at so many. It's again the same thing you said about Quest for El Dorado, controlling 2 different characters.
Yeah,
the way you can put pressure on someone where like they think they have you, or on that side of the board they kind of do, and then all it takes is you moving your other character in a way that makes them go, oh, but hang on, because he'll beat me there if I do this, and suddenly they can't even do what they wanted to do, and you've pulled them away from that. Like there's just so many decisions you're doing, and then that's even not even factoring, of course, all the powers and how every power changes the way you approach the game. Sometimes your win condition. Sometimes I play Zeus this game one way, and I'll play it a completely different way the next game, even though it's the same power, because of who I'm playing against. Yeah. So it's a phenomenal game. Like I don't know what it's going to take for me to get tired of this, or for me to gravitate away from it, or not pull it out or not bring it to the cabin or whatever. But right now it has not died down to my fun level at all. Yeah. From last time I did this list, from when I got it, nothing.
Yeah, such a good game. I've said plenty about it, but glad to see that it stuck around very, very high on your list.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so the last one for this video from me at number 11, staying at number 11 from last year, that is Res Arcana. So this is an incredible card game that is sort of a I guess tableau builder, engine builder kind of game, where you're sort of racing to 10 points. If multiple players reach the 10-point mark at the end of a round, it's whoever has the most above 10 will win. But you basically start the game by getting a deck of 8 cards. There's a deck of these 40 artifacts. If you're just playing with the base game, you get dealt a random hand of 8 cards, or you can play a draft variant where you get to draft your cards. And then you're going to shuffle up your deck. You get 2 of these mages dealt to you. You pick 1 mage, you draw 3 cards from your 8-card deck, and that's kind of what you start with. So you have a mage, your 3-card hand, and you have a deck left of 5 cards. You can't buy any new cards to add to your hand, but you're basically taking turns with the other players. You have these resources, and there's different types of cards or components on the table where you can acquire these places of power and monuments and items and all these little things, and the whole game is trying to find these little synergies and combos with maybe 2 or 3 little parts. It's basically trying to make something out of nothing is what the game feels like. Is you look at your cards, you look at what's on the table, you try and plan a strategy, and you just try and see if it works. In some games, it's going to completely fall apart, and you're going to realize you did things inefficiently, and you played too many cards, or you made a bad move here, or whatnot. And sometimes you're going to put together the perfect engine, and you're going to get this huge, massive, chunk of points in the final round and win. And it's going to feel so satisfying. I love so many things about this game, and I've briefly considered having it go into my top 10. The main reason why this didn't climb into my top 10 is when I looked at all the games in my top 10 that were ahead of it. Every game in my top 10 is a game where when you're playing the game, you're looking at the other players around the table a lot, and I just feel more connected to the players. And this is the highest game in my top 50. I guess it's my favorite game that I feel like most of the game is looking at what's in front of me, my cards in my hand, and what's on the table. So it feels a little less interactive, but yet because of how satisfying that card play is and looking for those combos, like I'm willing to look past and again, I don't want to be giving the impression that it doesn't have player interaction, that it's multiplayer solitaire. Like, it's nowhere near that, because you're competing for a lot of ththings. Like, when you play with players who know what they're doing, you have to be aware of what people are doing at the table, and not get attacked by the dragons that they can play and that kind of stuff. But the other thing I'll say real quick is some games by round 2 or 3 who is going to win, or that you have no chance of winning. You've fallen so far behind, and sometimes that second half of the game can drag a little bit if the conclusion seems a little obvious. But again, those little things I'm willing to look past because of how much I love the card aspect of the game. So that is Res Arcana, one of my favorite card games of all time.
Nice. Guess what?
Nice.
Number 11 for me, up from number 20 last year. Res Arcana moved up 9 spots.
I thought it was going to crack your top 10, but it's
cool.
It
was close. It was close.
Nice.
Is this the first? Did we even have a game last year that?
No, I was going to say the same spot.
Ever on the channel history. Res Arcana. I mentioned to you many times this year whenever we would play it and stuff, where I mentioned like how it was growing on me even from spot 20 and how this, more than any game I've ever played in my life, has had the biggest change from when I first played it to how it is now. When I first played Res Arcana, I didn't like it. Like, we played it once, and I remember you left with it, and I was like, yeah, that's not the game for me. Like
I was thinking of selling it after
Yeah.
that play. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, I know it is such a great game, and you said most of it. Like I love the aspect. I can't decide whether I like drafting to start the game or just getting the random cards because both offer different things. Drafting, and
What
trying
a
to,
good sign that is, though.
Yeah.
That either one is that fun,
and they're
right?
different experiences. Like one, you're
Very
trying to
different.
like optimize and figure out the best strategy in that opening, and the other one is how do I make the most of this, right? Yeah, it is so phenomenal. I've played so many games on Board Gamer. I've played the physical version, like even just at your place one time. We're like, let's just play Arcana.
Yeah.
We played it.
I brought it, so after we're done filming, if you have time after we're done filming, we can play it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Like it was close to my top 10. I don't have a specific reason it didn't make it. There was just other games I wanted to include on the top 10. I think this does have a chance of being a top 10 game for me over time, especially as I play. I played with one expansion, Lux de Tenebrae,
Right.
a bunch. As I play the next one, if makes things feel even better or new to me again, I could see that even helping to propel it. But it's just it's so much fun. I think it's a divisive game. Some people are like how I didn't like it at first. Some people are not going to like it or not going to enjoy certain aspects. I still don't really like the dragons all that much.
Me neither.
But I'm coming around to the idea of figuring out how to work with them, but and the odd time I've done a dragon strategy, and sure, it's felt good because I've had the cards to facilitate that. But
And the expansion makes them better.
Yeah, the expansion helps a lot. So yeah, Res Arcana number 11 just misses the top 10, but a big climb.
Yeah, I really like the point you made, and I totally agree. If that next expansion, Perle Imperii or whatever, is what might put it into the top 10 for me in the future. I got to see what that does, though. So
For sure.
awesome, glad to see. Yeah, interesting that we overlapped on that
Yeah,
one.
first ever overlap in our top
Yeah,
50 right
yeah.
there. Yeah. That is it. That is our 2011. We only have one video left, and that is the big one, the one that a lot of people are going to skip these ones and watch that one directly. And that is 10-1, our top 10 board games of all time, 2022. That'll be up in the next few days, so look out for it on the channel. In the meantime, feel free to comment in the comment section and make guesses which games you think haven't come up yet, or comparing to last year that you think which ones are going to shift in the order. What is the game that wasn't on my list at all last year that's going to be in the top 10?
Yeah,
See if you
same
can make
here,
those
actually.
guesses.
I've got one in the top 10 that wasn't there last year either.
There you go.
Feel free to come join our Discord community as well. For those who might not know, it's basically just a chat room. It's very simple to use. If you have any issues with where to find or how to join, there's a link in the description below. Feel free to leave a comment or whatnot. But especially around this time of year and when we're doing these big lists, you tend to see people who maybe even aren't around the Discord as much start popping up, and these discussions get very active. So lots of great people there, lots of fun discussions. So come join us, and otherwise we'll see you for number 10-1.